We'd only just talked about it. Okay, is that sharing?
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, welcome everybody to this specific session for childminders, an information session about Early Years Pupil Premium, that EYPP that we talk about an awful lot. Oh dear, why isn't that moving down? Oh, there we are. And the reason that we're focusing particularly on this is that we've always had a focus on this narrowing the gap, on picking up on children who are at risk of poor outcomes. And we've regularly shared this slide about equality and equity through our training sessions, but it's becoming more and more pertinent, particularly as the data set I'm going to share with you in a minute about our early years foundation stage profile results and how our children in receipt of free school meals are doing less well than they were even a few years ago. So we've got a real moral imperative to challenge it and to be doing things even better than we're doing them now around that early identification of these children. I remember this model shows that actually these children, like the little one in the purple top that's got multiple disadvantages in their life, we have got permission to be giving these children more of our time and our energy through our work with the EYFS. It doesn't mean we ignore other children, but if we set up our environments, correctly, then lots of children come to us equipped to be able to move their own learning on in lots of ways with some interaction with us. But this is really a sort of plea that those children who are at risk of poor outcomes really do need a bigger portion of us, a bigger portion of our time, and more of our professional focus to mitigate against the disadvantages that they may be facing in their early years. The positive news being that, of course, we can affect a huge difference if we do pick up on these children early and we give them more of our time and energy and more of our professional attention, then we can make a difference if we really focus on making those interactions positive, and we can challenge those synapses within their brains at an early age. We know that really stands them in good stead and gives them extra resilience for the future. So we know we're now working under a new early years inspection toolkit. And again, the focus here is very strongly on disadvantage. And the section at the beginning on inclusion states that this evaluation area considers how leaders and practitioners identify and support socioeconomically disadvantaged children, those eligible for EYPP. So we know it's a really strong focus on inspections. We never do things for inspections, but we always keep inspections in mind because, of course, if we're doing really solid EYFS provision, then when Ofsted come in to inspect and we know what they're looking for, that's what we'll be showcasing. But of course it's for our children to make sure that we mitigate against those disadvantages that are already evident by the end of their reception year. So our foundation stage profile data that's just been published, so our children from the end of last year, you can see for all children measured against a good level of development, we're actually doing really well. So the national good level of development, you can see there in 2025 was 68.3, and you can see in North Somerset we're doing really well for all children. And our local authority target that's been set through the Best Start in Life proposals is 80%. So we've got to do even better for all children. But what we're finding is the sort of, the really poor statistic, the one that we really have to pick up, is that the national percentage of children getting a good level of development, of those children who are in receipt of free school meals, who are socioeconomically disadvantaged children in receipt of Early Years Pupil Premium, are doing very poorly. So that gap is widening. So it's 51.3% of children in receipt of 3 school meals nationally got the good level of development, but only 44.9% in North Somerset. And you can see our local target is for 54.8% of those children to be getting a good level of development by 2028. So we've got a real strong push from government, but more importantly, that moral push to be doing everything we can to identify these children and give them those extra boxes that we saw in that first slide to make sure that their chances around good outcomes are equitable with other children. So for our EYPP numbers locally, identified in North Somerset from the last funding report in September 25, were 393 in total. Of course, now EYPP is awarded to all children that are, have received government funding. It used to just be our 3 and 4 year olds. So you can just see the split there. Our 9-month-olds that are eligible, there were 10 of them, 115 2-year-olds, 221 3-year-olds and 47 4-year-olds, of course, because a number of our children have just gone on to school. But the reason we put this evening on, and I know we've shared this information, is that out of 101 of our group settings, 79 of those settings identified children eligible for EYPP. But out of 119 childminders, only 16 identified children. So we really want to support if there's anything that we need to be doing in our gap of information about how we identify these children, which is why we've pulled you together this evening, and we'll share this this information with other colleagues in the childminding sector. So eligibility, just a reminder that children are eligible for EYPP if they receive at least 1 hour of free early years entitlements provision and their parent or carer receives one or more of the following benefits. I won't read those out, but they're there for you. And also a reminder that if a child was formally looked after by a local authority in England or Wales through adoption, a special guardianship order or child arrangements order, they are also eligible. So just a reminder there, highlighted in yellow, that if you have any children in care that you're not claiming for, please contact either myself or Samantha Dockrell. And that goes on throughout the year. If you ever have a child come into you for care and education who you know has had children's social care involvement because they've been looked after even for a single day, they will be eligible for EYPP. So but the only way you can claim for that is by contacting us, myself or Sam, verifying that, and then we contact the funding team on your behalf, and then the funding team add on EYPP. So it's a slightly different way of claiming for children in care or children who have been in care. So what are we asking you to do around identifying children? You may have already run your eyes down that eligibility list and just gone, well, I haven't got any parents that are eligible. But what we know is that we are missing children. So we're putting out another huge plea that we want to destigmatise this gathering information process by gathering information from all parents on the parent declaration form. That's the back. It's two-sided, that parent declaration form. We've tried to get it down to one side, but we can't. So it's making sure we look at that back side of that form and just say to parents, you can use us as a kind of, as a bit of an excuse and say, please, we know you may not be eligible, but if we get every parent to complete that, the EYPP part, we don't miss any children. So even if you know you're not eligible, please just humour us by completing it. And then we, as I keep saying, we don't miss children. So on that part of the form, you need to get the parent's name, their date of birth and their national insurance number. It remains confidential. It's just used for these funding purposes. And then for your processes, you need to also click the check for EYPP box to enable funding system to run the check when you upload your forms. And a plea from Vicky Burt, please ensure you also upload the EYPP page of the parent declaration form to evidence that you are allowed to claim EYPP on their behalf. Vicky said she's had to turn down several because although people have said that a child is eligible, because they haven't uploaded the page that shows the parent has given you permission, then again we can't add that funding on. So it's just, it's just really being meticulous about this, having these conversations with your parents, because we may think we know our parents' circumstances very well, but there may be, places where we don't. It may be that they're embarrassed to talk to you about it, and perhaps they're, some of the funding, if they're having extra days with you, are coming from another member of the family. There's all sorts that we might not know. But again, for that equity, if we get every parent to do it, no child misses out. So this next bit of information has actually come from the highlighted bit at the bottom, which is one of the Ofsted Early Years blogs, which is called How We Look at the Use of Early Years Pupil Premium in Our Inspections. So I've changed some of the wording, but if you want to actually have a look at that blog specifically, that's where I've taken this information from. And when we send the PowerPoint out, there'll be a hyperlink there that you can just click on to take you to that. So the DFA recently published guidance for local authorities on the use of Early Years Pupil Premium, And the Education Endowment Fund has also published guidance for early years providers on how to spend that money. We have actually had, since the EYPP's been for 9 months up, we have had group settings getting in touch with us saying we've got money coming in and we don't know how to spend it. So you can always look at those two areas for guidance, or you can always phone our team and we can talk with you about how best to target the spending of EYPP. As Ofsted frequently say, we're tasked with finding out what it's like to be a child at your early years setting. And in practice, this means Ofsted consider what it's typically like. And if they give particular consideration to disadvantaged children and those children with special educational needs and/or disabilities, then if you're doing well for those children, you're obviously doing well for all children. And this always includes children eligible for EYPP. So it will always be, we're being told it will always be a focus of inspections. So during an inspection, during the notification call, Ofsted will ask you if any children who attend your setting receive additional funding. They will probably want to track the experiences of these children throughout the whole inspection. As I've just said, if you get it right for the most disadvantaged and vulnerable, you get it right for everyone. So it makes sense for those to track those children, and then they can make those assumptions that if you're doing really well for those children, your provision is strong across the board. Ofsted will use their inspection methodology to have discussions with leaders, staff and parents, and these discussions will focus on what it is like at the setting for children eligible for EYPP. They might ask questions such as how are parents supported to access this crucial funding to improve the education their children receive? How do leaders decide what to use any funding for? What impact does this have on the children who receive funding? How do leaders and staff monitor this? And how does the setting work in partnership with those children's parents to support the children's regular attendance and learning at home? So a real strong emphasis on that partnership with parents. EYPP funding, it may come in a bulk, as I've just been talking about group settings, it may come for individual children. But what is important is that we can articulate exactly how we are spending that money. Not accountable down to the penny, but just so that you can talk in general terms about why you have chosen to spend a child's particular money in a certain way to support their learning, and of course always to support their outcomes, their learning outcomes. So we have got some forms that may support you with this. They're not statutory. We can't force these upon you, but it might support you when working with children with early years pupil premium funding. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach these forms. This just gives the heading. It's not the whole form. We'll attach these forms to the PowerPoint when we send it out, and you can just have a look at it. The cohort spending plan is for you to have a look at if you've got larger groups of children with EYPP. But the one that's perhaps most pertinent to childminding colleagues is the key person plan for the children. And again, this just shows the heading. There's more on the form that you'll see when we send it out. But good practice is to, if you get EYPP for a child, is to speak to the child's parents, not for them to dictate how the money is spent. You need to drive that because you're the professional and you know how best to spend the money for that child's educational outcomes. But it just is professionally courteous to be talking to a parent if their child is eligible for funding about how you are targeting that and why you've made those decisions. So they are really useful forms, and a lot of our group settings are using those regularly now. They're not very onerous, but they show really good evidence, and it really helps you to focus on those children. Ofsted will spend most of their time observing interactions, particularly between practitioners and children, particularly those who are disadvantaged, which will help them to evaluate the quality of education they receive. They will consider the decisions of leaders, so yourselves, about how well funding is used. Where good decisions are made and disadvantaged children receive high quality education, it is likely all children in those settings are benefiting from high quality provision. We as an early years team are also using the EYPP data we have got to phone round settings who have identified children with EYPP to talk to them about how they're spending their money and how they are supporting these children. So again, if you're not accessing that EYPP, then you're not part of those phone calls. So again, those children are slipping through the net. This might mean that the funding is used to provide targeted interventions for eligible children, or it could be used for professional development for practitioners, which improves the quality of education. So there's a range of ways that you can spend this money using your professional your professional thinking. Settings without EYPP. So again, it's, you might just say we've never been eligible, we've never had any children that are eligible, but Ofsted will challenge you about why you haven't, particularly if you've been in receipt of any social deprivation funding. So if you don't have any children identified, they'll want to know why this is, and they may look into questions such as how well do you know your community and the children and families it serves? How well do you know the children? Are parents aware that there is funding available that children could be entitled to? And do parents know that funding could support the setting to improve the education their children receive? So again, you're protected around that. If you start to say, actually, if you say to Ofsted, we know hand on heart we haven't got children who are eligible, because we get every parent to complete that part of the parent declaration form. So it's not just guesswork or, using your sort of local intelligence. It's proven that the funding system has not identified them through giving us those 3 vital bits of information. The other part that you can look at if you do have children in receipt of EYPP, or if you start to identify eligible children, is there's that link to the Education Endowment Foundation guidance and the Best Start in Life research review, both of you which give you ideas about how best to support children who are disadvantaged, how best to target additional interventions with those children that will support those educational outcomes, which, as we've already highlighted, are falling back by the end of the reception year. The other bit we just wanted to highlight and remind people is that we've also had a drive on EYPP through our Poetry Basket project. Hopefully everybody on this call is part of that project, which is having 12 poems across the year. It's our ambition that all children in early years are exposed to and at best learn those poems, so that when they go into their reception year, they've all got something in common in that they all know those 12 poems. But particularly with children in receipt of EYPP, for all of our 3- and 4-year-olds in receipt of this funding, we gift the poems to those children. And again, it just really highlights that we're trying to say to you, any of these children who are at risk of poor outcomes, identify them early, know where their funding is needed, but also within your practice, make sure you are giving extra time to those children, reading extra books with them, making extra links with families. So that's what we wanted to really sort of put out a plea to you through this information evening this evening. And I think we've managed to do it in 20 minutes. Thank you for all your time, and together we can truly make a difference. What we don't know is what our ballpark figure, we haven't got from DFE. This is how many children you have got who are eligible for EYPP. So at the moment, the only way we can get to those children, we can't say to you, you've got a child and you just haven't identified them. We rely so heavily on you to have use that positive relationship you've got with parents to gather that information. And we know that at the moment you've got a funding window, so if you can really try and think about those parent declaration forms and gather that information, you will make a huge difference to these children's lives. So thank you for listening. If there are any questions, please pop them in chat. As I say, we will send out this PowerPoint, we will send out those EYPP forms. And if there's nothing in chat, is there? Maria, you've got your hand up, sorry.
I had a question, Gail, sorry, and apologies if I missed it. How much is EYPP? How much money is paid?
Haha. Now, I should have put that on here. I can't remember off the top of my head, which is dreadful because it's recently changed. But it's I will be able to look it up, actually, I believe. But it's a fair amount per child. It used to be 375 on top of there, but it's gone up again. EYPP, but that's a very good point, and I will add that onto here, Maria, before I send it out. EYPP. No, it's not coming up. I can't. I knew it used to be 300 and something, but I can't remember what it's gone up to. So I will add that into the PowerPoint before it goes out. But it's very worth our while, and it can go a real way to supporting, whether it's you paying for extra training for yourself or paying for resources. Yes.
Sorry, I found it. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
No, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. You could get up to £570 per year.
Fantastic.
Per child.
per child. So it really can, so many little things that we can do, but we have to address that. In North Somerset, all of our children are doing better than national. Our children in receipt of free school meals, who are our EYPP children, are doing worse. Where are they? We need to identify them before we can get the funding, before we can then target that funding to make a difference. So that's what we want your help for. So thank you for your time this evening. Please share this, share the messages through your groups, through your, with your colleagues, etc. And we will make sure this recording is also available for either you to watch back or to be able to share with colleagues that couldn't make it. But that's all for this evening. We said we'd try and keep it short. So thank you for your time.
Gail, we've got we'll probably leave it. Karen, do you want to hang on for a second and we can have a look at your question?
Lovely. Thank you, Karen. Thanks all. If there's any other questions, or if people want to hear, if people, I'll stop recording now. But if anybody wants to stay on and hear the question, let me check.
Can you read it in your chat, Gail?
Stop recording. Yes, I've come out of that now. So stop recording.